This is a lengthy story, but I didn't think I could leave out any details. So this is my apology ahead of time. My story takes place over a period of time while I worked as a cashier at an Asian fast food restaurant during high school. I was one of our best workers, and always very friendly to the customers, and therefore, I basically worked all the time. On one of our slower days, a man came into the restaurant when it was only one of my managers and I working the floor. He had quite the impressive beer belly, a set of teeth which would make any dentist cringe, and ice blue, bloodshot eyes. He explained that he had never eaten there before and was just passing through for a few days, because he was a truck driver and was waiting on a shipment or something. Being the customer-friendly gal I am, I gave him some suggestions, and made small talk like I do with all of our customers. Well, he decided to take the small talk to a complete new level, as he began to openly talk about his drug abuse, and how the trucking company gave up testing him because he would constantly fail. Oh, okay, nice. Being reasonably freaked out, I got him away from the cash register to sit down at a table. I usually stayed behind the cash register and busied myself, but because we weren't busy, I served all the food and cleaned all the tables, and therefore it was easy for him to keep making conversation with me. He kept asking me random questions about places he could visit, to pass his time and whatever else he could talk about. Along with that, he prolonged his visit there by constantly ordering cups on cups of our wonton soup. Arguably because it's pretty good soup, but I'm almost positive it was because he wanted an excuse to talk to me. Once he finally left, my manager and I joked about how strange he was, and then continued on with our night. The following day we were extremely busy during lunch hour, and I was working on overdrive trying to get through the long line of people. I was completely preoccupied, when lo and behold my drug addict trucker friend comes up to my register. He told me how much he enjoyed the food the previous day, and also how much he enjoyed my company. Major red flag. Before he left to find a seat, he told me that he would definitely be back at the cash register to talk to me again, and ordered some more wonton soup. Great. Needless to say, I avoided the shit out of him the entire time he was there. Even though he kept trying to speak to me whenever I passed, and was constantly looking around the restaurant for me, I stayed the hell away from him. A little bit later, my intimidating badass manager and I were at the cash register doing our thing, when I couldn't help but notice him constantly looking at our entrance. All of a sudden he left the cash register in a hurry. When he returned, I asked him what that was all about, and he proceeded to tell me that my good pal kept entering in and out of the restaurant and pacing outside of our windows looking at me. So he left to tell him to fuck off. At this point I am so scared I cannot even contain myself. Being an avid reader of this subreddit, I immediately thought the worst. Shaken up, I completed my night at the restaurant and was reassured when I remembered that it was his last day in town, and that he lives in New York, which was pretty far away from the Midwest where I live. I truly believed this would be the last encounter with this creep. Months passed, and I had put the incident in the back of my mind, when all of a sudden you-know-who walks through the door, higher than a kite. My stomach dropped, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. He stepped right up to the cash register and immediately told me that my haircut looked really good. I'm literally pissing myself at this point. I said thank you, and asked what he would like to order. He ignored my question and kept repeating to me, "You don't remember me?" over and over again. I thought it would be best not to play into whatever fantasy he had, and I said I did not. I tried again to ask him what he would like to order, and he told me just a cup of wonton soup, and that he would be back up to order more. All the while, in between breaths, he kept muttering, "You don't remember me?" It was obvious he was high off of something, so I ignored him, and verbally pushed him to sit down. But before he left, he looked at me with his yellow, crooked smile and said, "I'll see you soon." Nope, no, no. All the people I was working with that night were pretty big guys who were very protective of me, so I did feel a little bit safer. But on the inside I was still in shock. I told my one co-worker the entire story, and he said he would walk me to my car after closing. Oddly, the man left pretty much without saying a word to me his entire visit. which did not settle well with me at all. When 9 PM hit and I was alone, my co-worker upheld his promise and walked me to my car. As we were walking, we heard an angry voice muttering closely behind us, along with steps gaining speed. In no time, my co-worker turns around and pulls out his pocket knife, waves it for him to see in the dark, and screams at the man to fuck off, or else he will slit his throat. All of a sudden, the man freaked out, turned around and sprinted in the opposite direction. My co-worker continued to walk me to my car and calmed me down, seeing as I was extremely shaken up. I drove home completely paranoid and hysterical in utter amazement of what could have happened to me. For other reasons, I quit my job soon after, and have since never seen that disgusting man again. But to this day I cannot help but feel uneasy whenever I pass a truck. And to this creeper's delight, I will in fact never forget him. I went to see Star Wars The Force Awakens with a friend of mine, like the entire world no doubt, and was incredibly excited. The friend I went with, who shall remain nameless for his sake, is probably the most annoying guy to ever go watch a movie with. He tries to talk to me during films, he gets his phone out all the time, and his mobile seems to have the brightest light ever. He goes to the toilet at least 3 times during any film, and once he brought in a bag of rotten bananas. This story isn't about my friend though, but wanted to paint the picture of my mindset while walking into the cinema. This cinema is an independent one in East London, and as I waited a few days after Star Wars opened, I hoped it would be less busy. Of course it was busier than ever as it was the weekend and half-term, so kids were running around everywhere. My friend was already starting to be annoying, pretending he forgot to print out the tickets, and then when I didn't react, made out like I was really worried. Christ, did I mention my friend is the tallest guy ever? He likes to sit right at the front and obscure everyone's view too. Like I said, this isn't about my friend though. As we enter the cinema, a teenage boy with an orange hoodie on and a scarf wrapped around his mouth was messing around with what I assumed to be his kid brother in the concessions line. I wanted a drink before the film, so lined up behind them. They were really annoying, and were messing around with the queuing ropes and bumping into people, and especially me about 5 times. He started to do it on purpose, I felt, so asked him nicely to stop. He did for a while, and then turned around and began to quiz me if I was a real Star Wars fan. Usually I wouldn't engage a troll, but I knew my Star Wars. So he asked me some relatively simple questions, mumbled from behind his scarf, all the while scoffing at my answers even though they were right. Not content with holding up the line and quizzing me for no reason, he did one last thing to try to make me snap. And it worked. He announced he had already seen The Force Awakens 3 times, and began to reel off the major plot points really loud, essentially spoiling it for everyone in earshot, but especially me. My friend, being my friend, laughed loudly because he doesn't really get Star Wars, and he would have just been on his phone the whole time anyway. So what do you do in this situation? I calmly collected my thoughts, looked at him straight in the eye and said, "Well, you're a bit of a cunt, aren't you?" He went quiet, left the queue with his little brother, and went into screen 1. I got my drink, and was in such a mood because the film had been spoiled. I hoped he was joking, but as the film unfolded I realised he had indeed shouted out spoilers for the whole plot. I still enjoyed the film immensely because Star Wars. I was half worried that he would try to sit behind me and throw things at me. But due to my friend's penchant for sitting right at the front, it's not a very good place for trolls to act out, because you are in full view. So in this instance, my mate came through. And that would be where this story ends if it wasn't for the fact that I haven't even gotten to the meat yet. As I left the cinema, I went one way and my friend the other way, and I walked toward the train station with my headphones on, blissfully in my own little world. The music was interrupted by a call from my friend, who I had left minutes before. I told him I was about to go into the train station so couldn't talk, and he told me that after we left the teenager in the hoodie came running up to him with a knife asking for that dumbass's address, as he was gonna shank me. I've lived in London all my life and been threatened with knives on more than one occasion. but my friend was from a small town and only moved to London later in life. So this was his first time being attacked. Luckily he didn't give my address as he didn't know it, but he gave him my bloody Twitter. If you have my Twitter, you don't have to go too far to work out my address. Nice. My friend also said that the teenager's scarf came down off his face, and his teeth were all rotten. Presumably why he hides it. I asked my friend to call the police and get a crime reference number, which he did, and gave it to me. I then called myself and gave my side of the story, and said I was worried he might try to come to my house and do something. I acted kinda nonchalantly because, to be fair, I could probably give as good as I get. The guy must have only been 16, 17, but he was wiry as hell and seemed to be looking for trouble. So a week passed. Christmas happened, and then this morning as I went to work, I noticed there were scratch marks on my front door like someone had dragged a knife across it a few times. It was definitely fresh, as the slivers of wood and sawdust were on the floor still, and it was raining yesterday. At work today, I sent an email to the police with a photo of the scratches. Not had a reply yet, but was concerned what would happen when I got home tonight. I delayed coming home for ages, but needed to get back to watch the footy. Liverpool won. Hooray! And didn't see anything else wrong with my door, and after rubbing the scratches a bit, it kind of blended into the wood okay. When I opened my door, which I did tentatively, as I've watched a lot of horror films, there was something on the floor under the letterbox. A dead bird was shoved through my letterbox, and its eyes looked like they were gouged out. I don't know if a person did the gouging or if it was found like that. To be fair, it looked like it had been dead for a few days at least. Now, I really don't know if the scratches and the bird is related to the teenager and his little brother, but it's likely it really is something to do with them. It's a police matter now, and I hope I don't need to update this anymore as I just want it to end. It's a bit weird even for me. I usually watch horror films before I go to bed, but tonight I watched Serendipity. Make of that what you will. Let's not meet again, rotten-mouthed kid, and please don't leave me dead things at my door. May the force be with your electric toothbrush. My husband surprised me with a Dakota Sport Retriever this year. For those who do not know this breed, it's more of a designer dog really, came from interbreeding Golden Retrievers and Cocker Spaniels in the 80s. So they are extremely friendly, loyal and energetic dogs. Bart, short for Bartholomew, is my constant companion, and I love him just the way he is. When he came home, I never would have thought that he'd do what he has done. When we picked him up, the woman asked if we were getting him as a guard dog. We weren't. Several more times she asked to make sure we weren't getting him to be a guard dog, because while both breeds will bark, they will rarely actually attack an intruder. We insisted that we weren't. He was to be our pet and companion. A little bit about Bart before I go further. He is the literal description of this breed. Friendly to a fault, he has repeatedly tried to befriend a Rottweiler down the street, who is actually trying to take a chunk out of his face through the fence. Extremely loyal, and very, very loving and good with children, as well as being highly intelligent. He's not big, but at 40 pounds and 16 inches tall, he'd give someone pause if they weren't sure he was friendly. He literally loves everyone and everything, even snakes and ferrets. The first 2 weeks with Bart were great. He was a quick learner and never had an accident in the house, and would shadow someone in the family at all times, and he has seemingly endless energy to play with our 2-year-old son, and never barked, even if someone knocked on the door. Even when my husband worked late and came home from work at 3 a.m, he wouldn't so much as open his eyes. We always joked that the woman we got him from was right. He was no guard dog. Then we began to notice things. At first they were small and sort of funny. He would look out the windows and just stare, or he would cock his head and seem to be listening. We always laughed and said he was hearing a ghost. Then he began to get up at night and do this. We repeatedly caught him staring out of the windows in the middle of the night, and once I could have sworn I heard him growl at the back door when I went downstairs for water. Yet, through all this, he remained the friendly, loving dog he always was. We even had my cousin stay over for a short time, after he was evicted from his apartment. And Bart still never so much as lifted his head when he would come in after third shift without knocking, and if it was during the day, Bart would run up to the door for a pat on the head. Last night our opinion of Bart changed forever. All night Bart had been acting odd. He was tense and wouldn't lay down despite him normally always laying at my feet. My husband was working overnight, so I stayed up late, as usual, because it's hard to sleep without him. Finally, at about 11 p.m, I shut off the bedroom light to sleep and called Bart to me. He sat on the end of the bed, but still would not lay down, and continued to seemingly stare off into space. Eventually I passed out, still confused but unconcerned. Not long after, I was awoken by a strange noise. It took me several moments to realize it was Bart. He was growling. Now I was concerned. Stories of dogs turning on their owners ran through my head before I realized that he was looking outside the bedroom door. I tried to see through the darkness, but I could see nothing through the pitch black beyond the door. Then a glimpse of movement, and Bart let out the most ferocious roar I've ever heard, and leaped from the bed and through the door, and suddenly a scream pierced the air, and at first I was afraid Bart had attacked my husband or cousin. Then there was a struggling type noise, and more barking and heavy footsteps running out of the hallway, and down the stairs, followed by the sound of Bart running after them. I heard the back door open and another scream followed by a heavy thump, and a grunt, then silence except for Bart's growling. I rushed downstairs and flipped the lights to find a stranger knocked out, halfway out of the door to our back patio, with Bart standing on his back. After calling the police and dragging Bart away, I called my husband. When the police arrived, they arrested the man and brought him around. After searching his backpack, they found a bundle of rope, handcuffs, a knife, and a rag soaked in paint thinner. As he started to come to while the police took my statement, another officer questioned him, where he confessed to casing our house, with the intent to rape me, then burglarize our house. He even admitted to not be concerned about Bart because he assumed he was stupid, because he never barked, even when my husband and cousin came home late. It sent chills down my spine to know he had not only been watching, but watching that long and enough to know that Bart didn't find that situation threatening. When my husband arrived, I explained what Bart had done. I thought he might never let Bart go. Actual tears came from his eyes as he hugged Bart, who helpfully licked them away. Then, almost as a cherry on top, as the police led the man away, Bart locked eyes on him and just stared at him, before faking him out with a partial lunge that sent him sprawling to the ground yelping. Needless to say, I will forever have trouble being alone at night, and I will never brush off Bart's behavior again. I should probably call up the woman we got him from as well and tell her she was wrong about Bart, and how grateful I am that she was. This was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced that involved another person, and had it not been for Bart, I'm sure I, or possibly even my son, would not be here, honestly. So, would-be rapist burglar, for your sake, let's not meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer again. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you all had a really good Christmas and a nice New Year. Mine was very quiet, which is just the way I like it. I'd also like to say thanks to all my subscribers, both old and new. Without you guys and your support, this channel just doesn't grow, and it has actually started to pick up a little bit in the past week or so. Until next time guys, take good care of yourselves. And thanks for listening.